Arlington County Fire Department since 1984 and has been the chief since 2004. So he's going to talk to us about some of the plans for the fire stations along the highway.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I'm not sure what's keeping you all cooped up in here when we get this great
yard work.
But I really do appreciate the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you this morning and talk a little bit about what we do, because that's very informative of the topic that you're most interested in, which is fire station locations, and then get your questions and see where we can go from there. So a little bit of background on the organization, because again, I think it's important to understand how we work and who we are, because it contributes so much to the dialogue about where we are located. To begin with, we're an organization of 320 people. We have, each member of the department is cross-trained in both fire and EMS. So we talk, we are labeled as the fire department, but we also provide all of the emergency medical services in the county also. In fact, about 60% of what we do in response is EMS related. So our resources are distributed to address, obviously, the fire side, what people think primarily of what we do, but also the emergency medical services that make up a significant portion of our business. We find, as most of the departments around this area do, that we can be more efficient by cross-training of all of our members. So I often get asked the question, why does a fire truck arrive when I dial 911 for an emergency medical call? And the reason is because every person on that fire truck is an emergency medical service provider, either at what we call the basic life support, an EMT, or the advanced life support, a paramedic. Every fire truck, every person in the department is certified at some level of emergency medical services. And because we have our fire trucks distributed more widely than we do our emergency medical transport units and ambulance, we can oftentimes get a fire truck to your medical need faster than we can the medic unit. When the medic unit is coming, what it's really bringing that distinguishes itself from the fire truck is the transport capability. The personnel are interchangeable. The personnel are the same regardless of what unit they're on. So for us, what makes a difference in our ability to provide the kind of service that you want is speed, right? Our response times are really important. So part of our response time is achieved by where we are physically located in the county, but part of it too is how we deploy the assets that we have. And so by cross-training of all of our personnel and distributing them throughout the county, we can get to you a lot faster depending on what your specific need is. Another thing that's important to understand about how we operate here in the county is that we operate in a system that is really regional in nature. So Arlington County has 10 firehouses. And when I say 10, I include the one that is in Falls Church, because we provide all of the fire and EMS service for the city of Falls Church under contract. The city owns the firehouse, which technically is in Arlington County. Okay, it's on our side of the border. And all of the personnel in that firehouse work for Arlington County. All of the, as I say, the apparatus and the firehouse are provided by the city, and the city actually pays for half of the salaries of the personnel there. But it operates as if it is one of the firehouses in Arlington County. When I talk about regionalism, what I mean by that is that the jurisdictions of Arlington, Alexandria, and Fairfax operate under what we refer to as an automatic aid system. That means that we don't use jurisdictional boundaries to define response areas. The closest unit, okay, to an emergency responds, regardless of what jurisdiction the emergency is in or what jurisdiction the resource might be housed in. So in the Lee Highway area, you'll find a lot of Fairfax County response here on the west end of Lee Highway, coming in through Falls Church and on the upper portion of the county where the McLean Fire Station oftentimes responds into Arlington. In the most graphic example of this automatic aid arrangement, if you go a little bit further to the south and look at Columbia Pike, the west end of Columbia Pike is primarily served by the Bailey's Crossroad Fire Station in Fairfax County. most of the first response for fire and emergency medical services in the area where we've just built the Arlington Mill Center, South Dinwiddie Street, that area, is primarily served by the Fairfax County Fire Station located in Bailey's Crossroad. Our system is so highly evolved that those resources can come into Arlington County and serve our citizens in some instances 6 and 7 times a day without anybody from Arlington County being present to oversee that exchange of services. How does that occur? Well, it occurs because number one, we've been doing it since 1975. All right, so it's a system that is very mature. And secondly, we do it through a high level of collaboration. The NOVA fire chiefs have a committee and a set of subcommittees that do a lot of work that contribute to the system that we all depend on. We exchange these services without cost to each other. We do not charge for the services that are provided. And the reason we do that is because we all benefit from this. The fact is we get more from Fairfax County than we actually give to them, but we give more to Alexandria than they give to us. Okay? And Alexandria actually gives more to Fairfax than they get back. So in a system-wide view, there's a balance that is achieved. It's important to understand this background because what we do in terms of providing services is really about a system, right? We have neighborhood fire stations, but the fact is each of those fire stations is part of a greater system. The system that is Arlington County and those 10 fire stations, and then the greater region of Alexandria, Fairfax, and actually we even include the city of Fairfax, which has a separate fire department from the county, and Prince William and Loudoun County. So our resources as we dispatch are all based on closest to any address in Arlington County, going out 30 fire stations. You have to go out 30 fire stations before we exhaust what is in our predefined resource allocation. So we may be drawing on resources from Chantilly, right, if the emergency is large enough, or if there are incidents going on in the county or elsewhere in the region that draws our resources down. Great example, 2 years ago, nearing the end of the winter, we had a pretty massive set of brush fires in the Washington metropolitan area. Now, as I was commenting before we started this morning, Arlington doesn't have a whole lot of brush, right? We don't see a whole lot of grass fires here. In fact, when grass is on fire, I get really nervous, okay? Because we don't do a lot of that kind of firefighting. But Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Prince William, and Loudoun were literally on fire. And they had drawn down a lot of their resources, okay? So Arlington gave resources to those jurisdictions to bolster their response while their resources were focused on fighting grass fires. Who came to support us? The District of Columbia. Right? We had resources from the district that came in to support us, so that again, we're lowering our response capabilities because our resources are depleted based on the amount of emergencies, but we have a system to backfill as best we can those resources so that your 911 call still gets answered. So our system is distributed based on response times, because I said before, for us, speed and competence are everything. Okay, if we can get to you really fast and we can perform in a way that you expect, then the outcomes are usually more positive. So our 10 firehouses are distributed in a way that focus on achieving a 4-minute response time. That's our goal, and we break that down by 1 minute of what we call turnout time. That is, we get dispatched, we have to get dressed and get ready to respond, right? We give ourselves a minute to do that, and then a 3-minute drive time, all right, to any address in Arlington. In 1999 and 2000, and I'm saying both years because we did 2 elements of the study, we did a fire station location study that looked at where do we need to be in order to achieve that 4-minute response time, okay? That study laid out a few changes as to where we were located, because it recognized that there were certain portions of the county that we could not physically get to in 4 minutes, in a 3-minute drive time. Most of those areas are in the upper north of Arlington County. The study looked at where could we rearrange our current assets. Again, this is county-wide, and do a better job of distributing those stations to meet that 4-minute response time. In the intervening years, some things have changed in Arlington County, not the least of which is the Crystal City project that is going to see an increase in density down there. When I talk about speed being something that we focus a lot on, I can't gloss over the fact that what drives our business, what drives our demand is people, right? So where you find the largest densities of people is where you will find the most response. The heaviest response area for our fire department is in the Crystal City area and in the RB corridor. More people means more demand, okay? So we built a new firehouse in Crystal City. We've renovated a couple of firehouses. Obviously, we built a new firehouse here in the Cherrydale area. But we have not really yet improved in those areas where response time cannot yet be achieved. And last year, we commissioned another study of the fire station locations. What we actually did was asked an outside contractor to look at the study that was done in 1999 and 2000 and update it in light of the fact that Crystal City was going to change, in light of the fact that height in Roslyn has changed. You know, we're going higher with our buildings there. So an interesting little component of response time is when we talk about response time being 4 minutes, what we're really talking about is horizontal response time, how long it takes us to drive to and arrive at the address that we've been dispatched to. But in a community like Arlington, we also have to take into account vertical response time, because it can take us as long to get to an upper floor of a building as it took us to drive to the address. So, as an example, the 1999-2000 study of fire stations envisioned Fire Station 10 in Roslyn moving closer to Courthouse, Station 4 in Clarendon moving to the west end of Columbia Pike to deal with that area that I was describing being first served by Bailey's Crossroad. When we restudied fire station locations, what we came to realize was if heights are now going to 400 feet in Roslyn, vertical response time means more today than it did 10 years ago when we did that original study. We need to stay in Roslyn. We can't afford to go to Courthouse because the horizontal response time adding the vertical response time will take us too long to get to where we need to go, especially for medical emergencies. All right? So the latest study now envisions 11 firehouses, okay, a net of 1 increase to the overall system. And it does so because it recognizes that when we stay in Roslyn with Fire Station 10, we also have to stay in Clarendon because, again, demand in the RB corridor cannot be adequately serviced enough with the fire station in Ballston and a fire station in in Roslyn. We need one in between. Station 4, I say Clarendon, is about 2 blocks from the Clarendon Metro at 10th and Hudson Street. So the new plan envisions 11 fire stations with an addition to that west end of Columbia Pike Station that I was mentioning before. Directly speaking to the Lee Highway area, so we've mentioned that we've just built a new firehouse a couple of years ago in Cherrydale. As many of you know, not the best of processes. Nancy was intimately involved.
Before our time.
Yes, yes.
Not before.
Certainly not the process, nor, quite frankly, even the results that we might have hoped for some time ago. But the process that we use going forward, as we look at placing firehouses, I assure you will be much better. We'll have a lot of community involvement. And where we're focused on right now is the fire station that is across the street from where we are today. Fire Station 8 at Lee Highway and Culpeper Street is number one of our oldest and most run-down facilities. That facility, and I've been doing a lot on this, so if I remember correctly, that facility was built in 1963. Okay, it is one of our oldest facilities. Obviously, when you look at the standards of buildings that the county has set, it is not meeting those standards in terms of energy efficiencies. It certainly does not achieve a level of comfort for the members of our organization. One of the things that we recognized a long time ago is that if we want to attract a diverse workforce, the old model of a gang bunk room, okay, and gang shower and restroom facilities doesn't cut it. So we long ago carved that fire station up to include individual bunk rooms so that everybody can have a level of privacy during their downtime. I didn't mention this before, hopefully you know this already. Our folks work a 24-hour shift. So the folks that came to work this morning at 7 a.m. will be relieved tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. by another shift. They will do that alternating 3 days, so they work 24 hours, get off for 24 hours, work another 24 hours, get off for another set of 24 hours, work a third shift of 24 hours, and then get off for 4 days. Get off for 96 hours. So they work an average of a 56-hour work week. Okay, some weeks are 72 hours, but their average is a 56-hour work week. So they do have bunk rooms. This is actually a pretty active place given the kind of community that we have, even at nighttime, but they do have opportunities to bunk down. But that facility is quite antiquated for what we need in terms of our workforce needs and in terms of what we expect out of buildings in Arlington County today. Moreover, and we've known this for a long time, that fire station is not ideally located in order to achieve the 4-minute response time that we need in the upper portion of the county. So the study looks at moving Station 8 to a location further north. All right, it would still serve this area, as would Station 3, which is the Cherrydale station, but it envisions moving Station 8 from its current location to a location further north, so that again, as we look at the system being able to serve the entire county with that goal of 4 minutes, we achieve that more realistically. The fact is, this area right here has 2 fire stations, and certain neighborhoods actually have 3 fire stations that can serve it in less than 4 minutes. So as we look to balance across the entire system, the possibility of moving Station 8 is something that we are focused on here in the near term. Now, you all know that the capital budget is currently under review. The board will be getting the capital budget here, I think, in just a couple of weeks. In the last CIP, there are actually 3 firehouses that are in the CIP. The CIP acknowledges that we've got work to do on at least 3 firehouses. It's actually more like 5, but we have to be realistic in terms of our planning and budgeting. And as the manager is right now shaping up the CIP that she will present to the board, those fire stations are again figuring prominently in that planning effort. And I think it is safe to say that Fire Station 8 is getting the highest priority. The station across the street is getting the highest priority in what the manager will be recommending to the board by way of her capital improvement budget. Let me stop there and entertain questions, observations that you may have. Yes, sir?
Chief Schwartz, you mentioned that the plan is to eventually relocate the station because of the problems further north. We've heard that one of the locations that might be under consideration would be up near the Salt Dome on Old Dominion Drive. Is there anything to that?
That is a site that we are looking at. Let me underscore here that when we entertained both a study in 2000 and this latest version of the study, one of the things that we got the assessors to look closely at is what land was available to us, what county land was available to us. I will tell you that the study originally came back and recommended the location for the firehouse to be Glebe Road and Rock Spring Road. Well, as we observed to the assessors, there's no land we're going to take at Glebe Road and Rock Spring Road, right? I mean, we're simply not going to do that. So we had to be more realistic. And so one of the locations that is identified is 26th and Old Dominion, where the Salt Dome, the leaf mulch pile is. This is the location right across from Marymount. That does figure prominently in the plan and in the recommendations. But obviously we would not be doing, again, there'll be a public process, a community process to engage your group and any others that want to be part of that process.
I mean, I guess related to that, so in your budget that you proposed, did your CIP request was to shutter the existing Station 8 and to move it elsewhere, not to make improvements to the existing Station 8, correct?
Correct.
And then, I guess for others, the question would be, has there been any conversation about what the county would use that land for once would the fire department still aim to hold on to that property, or that probably you'd be done with that piece of property?
The fire department would be done with that piece of property, okay? I do not yet know what the county might have designs on for that property. I've not been a party to any of those conversations. But obviously, that would be part of this larger process, because I want to be clear. You know, one of the things that I've emphasized with both my staff and county staff is that as we look to how we optimize our service levels, and that's really what this is all about, we can't just focus on where we're going. We have to focus on the conversation with the neighborhoods about where we are right now, so that everybody is comfortable with the decisions that we make.
Is there a fire station that's integrated into a neighborhood as that, if you ended up going to the Salt Dome property in Arlington? Is there any precedent for, because that is a residential location.
I'm sorry, ask the question again.
Are there any of the other 10 firehouses in Arlington, are any of them as integrated into a residential area?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Fairlington, number 7, sits, a couple of 100 feet from the closest houses. Station 9 on Walter Reed Drive is surrounded by single-family dwellings. I've said this, and I don't say this in jest. I mean, I think it's obviously serious to the discussion that we'll have. I think I might have said this about Station 3 many years ago. The only thing harder than moving a firehouse out of a neighborhood is getting a new one into a neighborhood. Okay, I mean, people love us once we're there, but again, how we dialogue and how we ensure people that we're going to be a good neighbor, I think, is vital to this discussion. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, there's some history behind this fire station.
Yes, there is.
And I think removing it would be offensive to the neighborhood. It was land that residents in the neighborhood gave so that we could have a fire station in our own neighborhood. I think that was long before 1963.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of history there too that I think that should be considered. I know when you do these studies, it's outside people, and they have no idea of the history or the impact. They're just doing a study. So I think those are things that should definitely be considered.
I could not agree with you more, and I am very mindful of that history. For those of you who don't know, that was the African American firehouse. In fact, even after that firehouse was built by the county, in not one of our brighter moments of history, if you were an African American firefighter, that was the only firehouse you were allowed to work in. Okay, so that does have some historical significance there.
In 1963.
Yes.
But there was a station there long before.
You are correct.
And neighborhood people volunteered to service the community.
You are absolutely. I make the
there was no service outside of African.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. I make the reference to 63 only to acknowledge how the age of that building. Okay,
Right.
not by any means the long-term history of the service. You are absolutely correct. A couple of years ago, we actually did during African American History Month. We did it right here, as a matter of fact. We did a whole program on the African American firefighters that serve this community, and had a number of the folks that were career firefighters, African American career firefighters, that took part in that.
And families are still here
Yes.
working at that station.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I think that's an excellent piece of information for this group to know, because I certainly didn't know that, but I think the bigger picture might be getting to what Andrew was saying. This group right here has an opportunity to impact what the county does with these parcels of land that maybe if the fire station gets moved, here you've got a prime piece of land. It could be a park. It could be a historical, designation, recognizing some of this.
Run it all together,
Yeah.
cemetery.
Right. So I think, because we're looking at the revisioning of Lee Highway, where can we, and we've talked, not maybe extensively, but quite a bit about how ugly certain stretches of Lee Highway are, and we have some more parks and greenery and all that, and I think, that might be an excellent,
I by the way, count that firehouse in the ugly.
It's not the ugliest. There's some trees on that property.
Could you tell us, in addition, I don't know if you can share this information, but in addition to the Old Dominion site, are there other sites on Lee Highway to the north that you're looking at?
Not on Lee Highway. And again, harking back to what land is available, you know, is part of what we focused on. We did that in 2000 and again in this updated study. So no, there isn't anything else that we focused on right now because there's not a piece of land. Again, and that's why we want to go north a little bit. If we stay on Lee Highway, we're going to bump into the same problem that we have with the Cherrydale Firehouse, which is that, you know, number 3 in Cherrydale and number 8 here are too close, and we have this longer response time to the upper portions of the county, which is mostly single-family residential. So there's not as much demand as I was describing before in Crystal City, but there still is demand there. We still need to place a firehouse where we can meet some of those, you know, closer to those time objectives that I was
So
mentioning.
you're only looking at the Old Dominion site, or?
That's the study only identified that site, you know, initially as they looked at available land. So yes, that's the only one that we've got, you know, on the board.
Are those studies publicly available?
The latest study is going through the process in the manager's office right now, but it will be very soon.
Here's some questions.
I got over here, yeah. Yes.
I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but currently there are 10 fire stations, right? And the study, and you talked about having 11?
Correct.
So if this is just number 8 is just a relocation, is there a new one being planned too?
The new one, as I said, would be, so, I apologize that this gets sort of confusing, but in the original plan, Fire Station 4 in Clarendon was envisioned to be moved to the west end of Columbia Pike. The facility, you know, we would renew at a different location to meet that broader system goal, okay? Because at the time, we thought a courthouse firehouse and a Ballston firehouse could serve the Arlington corridor
Okay, so
effectively.
the addition you mentioned is considered the new.
Right. The new would be an 11th firehouse on Columbia Pike in the west end.
Oh, I see.
Okay,
I
it
think
wouldn't
when you said
affect this.
addition, I thought it was just adding on to the existing firehouse. Okay.
I'm sorry, no, it would be an
I was
11th
wondering-
firehouse to add to the entire system.
Okay.
You said right now 60% of the resources go to EMT.
Right.
Do you see a growth in that vis-a-vis the firefighting? I mean, the new office buildings have a lot of firefighting capability within themselves, and people expand and they need the EMT service. And has there been any thought about EMT only station?
Not an EMS station
EMS,
only. Okay, no, we would likely not do an EMS station only, but let me just real quickly give you, one of the reasons that we have more fire trucks than we have medic units, even though the demand is higher in EMS, is that when we go to fires, we need more resources, right? So just by way of example, if you called up and said that your house was on fire, that the response to that call would be 4 engines, 2 ladder trucks, a heavy rescue squad, a medic unit, 2 battalion chiefs, a fire marshal, and a command aide. Okay? So that's coming from multiple.
Wow.
That's coming from multiple firehouses, okay? Whereas if you call up and say, I'm having chest pains, you're going to get an engine and a medic unit. All right? Now, we just had some recent discussion about this with board members. We do see a growth in EMS, in part by more people and in part by the aging population, right? I mean, we're all getting older. We're looking at, you know, the baby boomers and still will for several years to come, you know, being an impact on our system. So 60% of our business is EMS. 40% of our EMS demand does not result in a transport to the hospital. All right, so 40% of the 911 calls that we get don't result in a transport. And yet, the call that on average takes the longest is the call that doesn't result in a transport. What does that mean? It means that units are tied up managing situations, taking away unit availability for arguably more legitimate emergencies. We've been looking at this problem for a while now, and our approach to it right at this point is to try and better manage demand. So 2 weeks ago, we brought on, as part of our complement, a physician's assistant. I have a medical director already. I have an emergency physician who is our medical director. All systems in Virginia operate this way. We as EMS providers operate on the license of a doctor, okay? But we brought on a physician's assistant to deal with a lot of the unnecessary demand. So this person is out doing community outreach with licensed care facilities, nursing homes, elder care facilities that place a high demand on us, often unnecessarily, all right? We are looking at education programs to get people to better understand the proper use of 911. And we are looking at providing alternatives to an ambulance responding to a 911 call. We're actually doing a study right now that is looking at the information that we receive in the 911 center that could help us to better understand how to deploy our resources. Because as I've been saying for a couple of years now, what we essentially have is a one-size-fits-all solution to an array of problems. That solution is a box on wheels with 2 highly skilled providers that go to one location. Okay? If that fits your need, get in the box and we'll take you to the emergency room. But at least 40% and arguably as much as 60% of that demand could benefit from a different resource. Still dispatched on an emergency basis, still dealing, with the 911 call with a high degree of concern, but trying to manage that call in a different way. If none of this works to our expectations, we will add medic units to our system.
Okay. By the way, I had an incident where I was having a cardiac stress test in Arlington. Someone had an event during a similar stress, and the transport from that doctor's office at Arlington Hospital to emergency was the fire department.
Right, the doctor's offices call us all the time. Yes, we go to doctor's offices all the time because they're often not equipped to do what an emergency room can do.
Well, I'm surprised this hospital didn't.
Back, yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. I want to go back to the relocation of the facility.
Yes.
Question. Whenever public facilities start relocating on other public land, there's a ripple effect, like where will the soft zones go? And I don't know if that was part of your study, you didn't have an answer to that. But the second part of this question is, did your relocation study look at any commercial properties further out of the highway where your service needs are to do a land swap, for instance? Perhaps with someone who is interested in that. Is that the first part of the study?
So, to the second part of your question first, the study did not identify any commercial locations. It could, if our proposals here, don't pan out. To the first portion of your question, all of the planning on any site, that the county currently has would include the services that are currently provided out of that site, acknowledging the addition of a firehouse. So if we're looking at the Salt Dome site, that would be part of a comprehensive plan, and again, that would be presented to the community, would be part of that whole community dialogue. But it would look at how do we continue to, provide those services too, because that Salt Dome has a purpose. There's a need for it, in terms of getting salt to the north portion of the county. Yes, sir.
Further on that, two quick questions. Is one of the reasons why the study is looking at relocating Station 8 to the Salt Dome area to provide better service to the far north of the county, number one. And number two, given that Old Dominion Drive is a state highway, are there going to be any additional hurdles that you'll have to go through as far as traffic control and those types of things if it's actually built there?
So the second part of your question, yes, that's exactly what we had to go through in doing Cherrydale. And many of you have probably experienced the morning rush hour in front of that firehouse, or along that portion of Old Dominion, and what we've had to do there with the crosses and the signs, and doing everything we can to get people to not block that. It's probably be a good opportunity for me to ask everybody not to block the doors, not to block the exit ramp on that firehouse. So short answer is yes, we'll have to deal with the state, on all of that. But I don't see that as being overly burdensome. And then, I'm sorry, the first part of your question was?
Is part of the reasoning about looking at that location is to give faster response to the far north of the county?
Right, so I mentioned that there are 3 firehouses, identified in the long-term CIP. We have other facilities that we've got to do something with. In terms of my priority, Station 8 goes to the top of the list, because not only is the facility in need of replacement, but by moving it to another location, I can improve the response times. So the answer is yes. mean, we achieve, it's not like doing Station 5 where we literally, in Crystal City, where we built the new facility right next to the old facility. Nothing changed in terms of improved service. Okay, this gets us an improvement in service.
Where was I, where did I hear people talking about, where did I read that something that may be coming somewhere is the multi-purpose fire stations, EMTs with other things now? For instance, to make it easy, put a grocery store on top of the firehouse, or put affordable housing on top of it. Is that any thinking that the county's going through?
Yes, I mean, we are looking obviously at how properties might be any project that we do might be maximized. We have had, and this is especially true in the Roslyn area, okay, a number of the discussions going on about the Roslyn area, we were talking about integrating a firehouse perhaps into the bottom of a high-rise building. Whether or not that would be residential or commercial, had not been determined. And obviously the choices that the school board has made recently is altering that. But we are perfectly willing to co-locate with either a residential or commercial property if we can maximize the use of the site. I actually was on the board, I guess it was a commission, in the city of Alexandria that worked the affordable housing over top of the firehouse that is in Potomac Yards. That's not the way I would want a project done like that. I would certainly welcome affordable housing above a firehouse. I would not welcome a stick-built affordable housing above a firehouse. I think that when you look at what we can do in terms of construction, we can do far better than what they did in Alexandria. But co-locating or integrating one of our facilities into another group of facilities, we are perfectly open to. Anything else?
I have one, we'll take this opportunity. We requested that the Cherrydale Firehouse crosswalk be used as a pedestrian crosswalk, particularly between the library and Upper Cherrydale, because it's a safe pathway and it doesn't have the confusion of the 5 points and the other places. It's a very direct path. And we've essentially been turned away by your department in terms of using that lighting facility or just using establishing a crosswalk there. Could you comment on that? Why it's so difficult to achieve?
Are you talking about, you're talking about it at the volunteer-owned firehouse down the street?
No, I'm talking about it in the Lincoln Free.
I apologize, I'm not completely familiar with the topic. I know there was some conversation about a light pole down near the old firehouse.
Yeah.
I promise you I will look into that and get back to you guys. And
That's actually an easy point to cross as well. But it turns out that crossing Old Dominion is pretty easy because there are big gaps in cohorts and you've got to, you only have to look in one direction and so forth. So it's not, there's good reason for Cherrydale to want to have a crosswalk. We'll talk.
I'm not entirely familiar with it, but I promise you I will look into it. And obviously it's not entirely my decision because DES also plays into that.
Yeah,
right. Yes, sir.
Something you mentioned earlier, when we think about this, you talk about allocating resources and having, 2 responders for EMS to one incident. And talk about maybe using the community and the neighborhood associations and potentially getting points of contacts within them where, in a sense, alleviate that bottleneck that shows up. But they're trained, they're all well positioned to do some of that first response work till a unit shows up. Is that something you've considered as the population changes and more people want that quick access?
So I actually really appreciate your even use of the words first response because in the last 13 years the common vernacular has become that I am a first responder, right? That's something that changed after 9/11. I don't view myself or my department as the first responders. I view you as the first responders. And the fact is, in most incidents, a citizen that is close by to an incident is going to provide at least some first level of comfort, if not care. What I would direct you to, and it's something that we support very strongly, is the Citizen Emergency Response Teams, CERT in Arlington County, which has over 500 members. We do much of the instruction for CERT. The thing I love about CERT, and I talk about this both nationally and internationally as I travel, is that unlike most CERT programs, which are directed by government, even though they fill that gap that you're describing, Arlington CERT is far more community-based and organic in its nature. The entire leadership is voluntary. They simply turn to us and say, this is what we need in terms of support, and we provide that to them. But to broaden or expand CERT, which is very much neighborhood-based, I think is the way to go. And anything that you guys can do to promote that, I can assure you, we will be right behind you to support and instruction.
I guess it's what you do is integrated with sort of directly when it takes place.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. And just in a very related note, we just yesterday, day before yesterday, we just did a CPR instruction at W&L High School where we certified or participated in the certification of 375 high school kids in CPR. And honestly, there is nothing better that you could do in terms of a basic skill to learn than CPR, which has become very easy over the last couple of years as we really advanced our knowledge of what works in terms of good practices. So, but we very much support and would encourage you to join CERT. I'm over, I know. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Let me just say how much I appreciate the support that you give to us. I realize that I am a very fortunate fire chief to have the kind of support that I have here in Arlington. Many of my colleagues across the region cannot say quite the same thing, but I know that the only way that we become successful in serving you is with your support, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, we have several CERT members in the Waverly Hills Civic
In
Association.
a committee.
And a committee,
fact,
and we've actually recruited them, so it's part of our civic association.